Hello and welcome to The Report, Cal State Fullerton's premier source for news, views, and info. I'm Evan Boydston.
I'm Nicholas Garcia.
And I'm Shayera Arias. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the possibility of a vote recount in selected states. Also, we'll be addressing the issue of the late Fidel Castro.
Plus, we'll be bringing you reports on Steve Bannon and President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet.
All this and more on today's episode of The Report.
Before we delve into our first hot topic, we'd like to invite you to be a part of the discussion this semester season. Click on the link in the caption of any of our report episodes to fill out a secure Google form with our opinion on any controversial issue that we've talked about now or in the past, as many of these issues are reoccurring and evolving, ranging from gun control to abortion, climate change, or the state of politics right now. All we ask is to please keep it civil and, as with any essay, cite your sources.
Election drama continues nearly a month after Trump's victory. Green Party nominee Jill Stein is pushing for voter recount in 3 states. This move comes after noted discrepancies between paper ballot and electronic ballot voting. Her camp has since raised nearly $6.8 million to fund a recount in Wisconsin. The Green Party is also seeking recounts in Michigan and Pennsylvania, states Trump won. Hillary Clinton's campaign also stated they would participate in the recount but would not contest the results. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump took to Twitter to voice his dissent. He tweeted, quote, "Serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire, and California. So why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem," end quote. Just as his other Twitter controversies, Trump's evidence supporting these statements has yet to be found. In a second tweet, he said, quote, "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally," end quote. But according to count by the New York Times, Trump lost popular vote by over 2 million ballots. Trump is the president-elect, but with the voter recount process underway, will the U.S. see any change before his inauguration? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Well, you know, what a good effort that she's decided that she would like to do a voter recount. But I think that's so much money that is going to be wasted on something that is probably not going to make any change to the elections itself. This has been like such a controversial election, very emotional for a lot of Americans. So for you to, come up with let's recount the votes now, it kind of gets people a little bit excited with the idea that potentially he might not become president, because that's what people would read on the tablets. Like, okay, we're going to recount the votes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. So, for the majority of Americans that aren't very aware how things work, she already, stepped down in a way. So now they're going to think that, oh, maybe there's a possibility that she could become president. And I think that's what's something that people need to understand, that,
Right. Well, I think that the issue lies more in getting every vote counted and counted properly and making sure that there are ballots that were faulty, they're not being counted. Obviously, it's going to take a whole lot to change the results of the election. I don't think that this is going to change who the next president's going to be at all. And I don't think that Hillary Clinton thinks that either, or even Jill Stein. But it's just about getting those votes counted properly.
Yeah, she said that she wanted to make it, the whole purpose of this is to make it that the election process is legitimate. Primarily, but also I am curious with the $6.8 million. Is it really going to cost that much to do the recount?
Right. Yeah,
why does it cost that much? Where is this money going?
So it's 2.5 to actually go through court. So that's how much they have to pay for them to put it. So
is that for all the states and everything?
Well, it's $2 million.
Either way, I feel like the legal fee shouldn't be $6.8 million.
No,
and it just keeps growing.
I think
so. That's where
the rest of it is to pay, whoever's doing the process, but that's a lot of money regardless, you know what I mean?
Yeah, also someone needs to take Trump's Twitter away, because he needs to stop going out on Twitter and lashing out,
He's going to be the president.
Exactly.
There's no need for him to be tweeting.
And he has his own personal Twitter, and he's doing this. It's almost like he's shooting himself in the foot when he does this. It's almost like it's almost like saying, like, hey, I want 3 cookies. It's like, no, you only get 2. He's like, no, fine, only 1. It's like, come on, I don't get it.
It's like him wanting to continue to do rallies.
Yeah.
While he's president, because he likes the feel, and his supporters, they like it. They like what he tweets. They agree with him. They like the crazy energy that he provides in rallies. So it might work for them, but it's not going to work for the majority of the United States. The popular vote did not go in his favor.
I mean, he already won.
Yeah, and I actually thought he wasn't going to be tweeting anymore. I had read something about saying that his publicist and certain people were going to be being accountable of his tweets and his Twitter account, and that he wasn't going to be tweeting anymore. So it's kind of interesting that he's still. I feel like we just saw, instead of the new Donald Trump as president, I'm seeing more of the Donald Trump candidate that was so controversial and
Yeah, I think that we need to learn that we're not really going to be able to trust anything we hear that they say they're going to do. They might say, oh, we're going to control his Twitter a little more, but he has total control. If he wants to tweet something, he's going to grab his phone and tweet.
Yeah. And honestly, as president, and Twitter is a perfect platform for him to voice his opinion out to so many Americans at once. He should be able to tweet. It's just a shame that he tweets the things that he does sometimes. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And speaking of voicing opinions, a lot of people have lots of opinions on our next hot topic, Fidel Castro. Latin America and the rest of the world was in shock upon hearing the death of former Cuban President Fidel Castro. The Cuban face of socialism revolutionized the country while keeping an iron grasp on the island. While some consider him as a hero, others consider him as a tyrannical dictator. Castro held office in Cuba for 47 years. He led the Cuban Revolution in the 1950s and promised prosperity for the land. While Cubans received universal health care and education, he neglected his promise for prosperity by allying with Soviet Russia. Under his rule, he nearly began a nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and in 1962, the Soviet Union placed missiles on the island to prevent U.S. interference. The U.S. placed an embargo against Cuba. Castro also became known for jailing and exiling citizens for voicing their dissent. Castro died at the age of 90 after reportedly surviving over 600 assassination attempts. He is succeeded by his younger brother, Raul. Will Castro's spirit continue the Cuban Revolution, or will his death mark the beginning of a move towards democracy? How do we feel about this?
I'm from the Caribbean, so I'm like right there close to Cuba, and a lot of Cubans that were living in the time for his regime would move to Dominican Republic, move to Puerto Rico, and a lot of, obviously, in Miami. So I know firsthand how they feel, those that were living in his regime. So him dying is a beacon of hope for them. I texted a friend of mine who is Cuban seconds after CNN broke the news, and I was like, oh, Fidel Castro died. And he said, the devil has died. So, there is this large population of people that feel as though Cuba is now going to change completely, and it's a big hope for them. And then there's this other population of people who did see him as a leader because that's all that they know. They never left Cuba. They don't know the world that's out there, and they've never lived in the United States. So I don't really think that the government's going to change that much right now, because the person that is the president right now, who is his brother Raul, has been president since
for 10 years.
Almost 10 years, exactly. Yeah, for 10 years. So, this isn't something that can happen overnight. I'm pretty sure until maybe the entire regime is over from his side of the family, maybe a new generation of politicians take over, because obviously it's the military right now. Not much will change.
Well, I thought it was absolutely atrocious that a lot of the media was somewhat defending him as some revolutionary person. Yeah, he started a revolution and whatnot, but he essentially had concentration camps and would put gay and lesbian people in there, and people that with disabilities and whatnot, and people that he didn't see fit to be on Cuba and whatnot. And there's a reason why millions of people tried to escape Cuba. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people were defending him, saying, "Oh no, he was a revolutionary," because in reality, when he took control, the GDP of Cuba was, I think it was 2,000 per person or whatever. Then 40 years later, when he dissolved power to his brother, the GDP was 2,300. That's accounting for inflation and everything too. And that's okay. Yeah, you grew the economy by $300. Congrats. So it's so when people want to say that he was some revolutionary figure, he really in reality did not do much for the people, because his net worth was $900 900 million by the time of his death. Yeah, okay, everyone living in poverty over in Cuba. So I feel very strongly about how the media have been treating him, because he's not a very good figure. Also, in regards to universal health care, I read reports of people had to bring their own light bulbs to the hospitals that they were getting their health care from, and also doctors were reusing latex gloves. So, universal health care, was it working there? I don't think so.
Well, you know, and he comes from a wealthy family anyway, so he's always enjoyed kind of a silver spoon, and it's very upsetting for a lot of Cubans when, you know, most of the country lives in poverty, and it's the same people who were upset when the United States, you know, opened relations with them again. You know, the same people were upset, and these are probably the same people who are seeing a little glimpse of hope that maybe, you know, democracy might be moving towards the island. As Shire already said, I don't think that that's going to happen until the Castro family is kind of removed from power, and we might see a revolution. I doubt it.
This past week, Trump announced 2 more cabinet members to his administration. South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley will serve as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Haley was born to Indian immigrants and is the first non-white to be elected to Trump's cabinet. She has little foreign policy experience, but pushed to remove the Confederate flag off Capitol grounds. Haley has also previously opposed Syrian refugee resettlement in South Carolina. Former Michigan Republican Party chairwoman Betsy DeVos will serve as the Secretary of Education. DeVos's beliefs lie within advocating for school choice and charter schools. This battles the public school system, who receive state and local funding based on enrollment. Trump selected Steven Mnuchin as the Treasury Secretary. He previously served as Trump's campaign finance chairman, but has no government experience. He is a former Goldman Sachs executive. His role directly affects the financial sanctions regarding Obama's Iran nuclear deal and the embargo lifted off Cuba. Michael Flynn is nominated to be the National Security Advisor. Retired Army General Flynn combated Islamist militants, but is known for a combative management style. Jeff Sessions is nominated as the Attorney General. Sessions believes in strict immigration enforcement and reduced prison sentences. As Attorney General, he can change how civil laws are enforced. Sessions has been called civil rights groups un-American. Trump nominated Mike Pompeo as the CIA director. Pompeo was a lead investigator in the 2012 Benghazi attacks. Trump's cabinet so far consists of far-right advocates who will benefit and who will suffer. Who will benefit and who will suffer from these selections. So, I mean, he's in regards to this, he wanted to drain the swamp, and in some cases he has by bringing non-government people in, but also they don't have the experience. What's your guys' takes?
They're saying that this cabinet pick is one of the main cabinet picks of all times where they do not have that much experience in politics. And I know that there's a quote saying, like, the best politicians are those who didn't study politics or that aren't actually politicians. So it's kind of interesting, though, to me, his pick for Treasury, because if it is a very successful man in Goldman Sachs and invest in finance, then that could potentially be positive for the country's economy, because if he's good with money, and although handling your own personal account and maybe an entire company's account isn't the same as handling the account of all Americans in the United States, but there is a potential there that he could be good with the company, with the country's economy.
Well, I think as far as the Treasury, we're going to see consistency, because he hasn't drained the swamp there. He might be draining the swamp a little bit with some of these outsiders, political outsiders, that he's chosen to be part of his cabinet. However, again, we're not seeing a cabinet that's going to represent the entire United States population. You know, and that's the problem here. He said that he wants to be the president for all Americans, but based on his cabinet appointments, all these far right-wing people, it doesn't look like that.
That's true.
Yeah, I know. I think it's just really interesting because with Steven Mnuchin, Goldman Sachs is pretty much, they are very close with the government. You know, they have a very nice relationship. So in regards to draining the swamp and that, like, it's definitely not drained. It's just continuing on. But also with that being said, like you said, there will be there is consistency with that, you know, like with that being said, we'll see how this goes, though. I mean, it almost seems like he's just handpicking his friends, essentially, just to benefit them. But for the charter schools advocate, I'm a huge advocate for charter schools, just because I've done a lot of research on that, and the public school system, especially with Common Core, has been, a lot of people are opting out of Common Core because it was personally funded by Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. So in order to do Common Core, you have to get Bill Gates' his computers and everything, because so it's almost like that was a personal interest on him. So I'm not a fan of that, and just because like also charter schools there's a lot of studies done that there's been significant benefits for people in the inner cities that go to charter schools and whatnot too. So
I do like the idea of more charter schools, but of course, as you guys said, it will not probably benefit the pocket of a lot of people who can't afford it. So potentially, maybe if she does come up with some kind of way of funding students and family households with the money to be able to go to charter schools, then it could potentially be something great for students who can't afford it if they do get that help. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I will say one thing about Nikki Haley. I was surprised that she chose her as the UN ambassador and maybe not a bigger role, because she is well liked on both sides of the aisle in her home state and across the country. So that was interesting to me.
Absolutely, I know that's what I noticed that too. And so I mean, obviously we're all hoping for the best for Donald Trump, but only time will tell, you know. So
And
absolutely.
Also, his pick for UN, technically, even though she's Native American, I think that was his way of kind of bringing that sass to his picks, because he's picking people that aren't just all white, if you think about it, even though she doesn't have that much
No,
experience.
absolutely. I think that she's a great politician. She's a really good person to choose, and that he was smart in picking her. I just think that maybe he could have put her in a different role.
yeah, he's definitely trying to be strategic with this, though. Well, that's all the time we have on today's episode of The Report. Stay tuned next time for more news, views, and info to go. I'm Evan Boydston.
I'm Nicholas Garcia.
And I'm Shayra Arias. Stay fresh, Fullerton.